What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and over the holidays, Konami revealed some pretty surprising but also pretty powerful legacy support cards. On one hand, we have a new Battleguard monster. This card is really cool. It not only ties together the awkward Battleguard archetype with Swamp and Lava Battleguard, but also it's a really cool piece of generic warrior support. On the other hand, though, we have two new Weather Painter cards, and these two cards are absolutely ridiculous. In today's video, I wanted to talk about all three of these legacy support cards that Konami revealed over the past couple of days because they are really cool and I think they might have an impact on the metagame. First up, we have Battleguard Zero. Now, I'm pretty sure in the TCG this card will have a different name, but at the moment this is what it's called. This is a level 1 Earth Warrior effect monster with 50 attack and 100 defense. We don't see a lot of monsters with just 50 attack. I believe this is the second one in the entire game. This is a card that says you can only use the 1 and 3 effects of this card's name once per turn each. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add one Feast of the Wild at level 5 from your deck to your hand. Battleguard monsters you control gain 500 attack, and finally you can tribute this card, special summon one level 8 warrior monster from your hand. So this card really did have a tough job. You know, the Battleguard support that we've gotten in the past has been kind of random, but I think Battleguard Zero really does bring the entire deck together. If you guys haven't seen Feast of the Wild at level 5, by the way, here's what it does. This card was released back in 2014 in Duelist Alliance. It says special summon up to 2 level 5 warrior type monsters from your hand and or graveyard, but their effects are negated also for the rest of this turn. They cannot attack. Now, I always thought this card had potential. It is a non-once per turn effect, so if you have multiple copies, you can keep reviving level 5 monsters from your graveyard, or you can special summon cards from your hand as well if you need to do that. Overall, I think this card is pretty good, but it didn't really quite have a deck that it fit into. But this new card that gives you essentially 3 more copies of Feast could actually make a pretty big difference, because now if you play a level 5 warrior deck, you'll know that you basically have 6 copies of Feast in your deck. Let's talk about some decks that this card could see play in. First off, of course, we have the actual Battleguard deck. If you wanted to use this card in a dedicated Battleguard deck, you would use it to special summon Swamp and Lava Battleguard with the Feast, and then you would tribute it to special summon the Battleguard King from your hand. Now, that's maybe not the craziest thing ever, but it does give your deck a combo to go for, which is a pretty big step up for the Battleguard strategy. Beyond that, though, keep in mind that this card is pretty darn generic. Feast can just special summon any 2 level 5 warriors from your hand or graveyard. They don't have to be Battleguard cards, and the level 8 monster you special summon only has to be any level 8 warrior monster in the game. It doesn't have to be Battleguard King. So what other decks could you play this card in? Well, there are a few. I think that this card is pretty interesting in a UA deck. They do have 2 different level 8 warrior monsters, and they have 2 different level 5 warrior monsters, so that could be kind of neat. I think this card actually goes pretty well in the, I don't even know what to call them, the Warrior Star cards. I talked about these a little while ago, but they have a bunch of level 5 warrior monsters that would be really good with this card, so I think that could be a place to try this out. I also think that Blackluster Soldier, Sacred Soldier is a very good card to special summon with this card's effect. I don't know what level 5 warriors you would play in a deck alongside this one, but if you are looking for a good level 8 monster to special summon, I think Sacred Soldier is a pretty good option. Finally, I will briefly mention here that I think you could theoretically try this card out in a Warrock deck. They do play level 8 and level 5 warrior monsters, so maybe you could find a combo that worked in that strategy. Overall, I think this is an awesome piece of legacy support. It not only helps out the Battleguard deck that it's a part of, but also it can be used in a bunch of different more casual warrior decks as well. I think this card actually does have potential in the future if we get a deck that has a good set of level 5 and level 8 warrior monsters, but for now it'll probably be restricted to more casual play. I think that's fine, and I think the card is great, but I can't wait to see if someone is able to come up with a more competitive deck using it in the future. Next up, we have 2 new Weather Painter cards, and these 2 cards were not revealed at the same time. So what happened was that their new spell card was revealed and people freaked out about how crazy it was, and then just a little while later we got a new Link monster announcement as well. well. So people really are hyped about these new Weather Painter cards. They both look very good. Weather Painters are already not that bad of a deck. They've never been super competitively viable, but they have a lot of good cards in their archetype, and these two new cards really do boost them quite a bit. Let's take a look at the Weather Forecast. This is their new field spell, and it says you can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. You can only use this card name's 2 and 3 effects once per turn each. When this card resolves, you can place one the weather spell or trap directly from your deck to your spell and trap zone face up, so already that is a consistency boosting effect. The second effect says you can also treat face up the weather cards in your spell and trap zones as the weather monsters and use them for the link summon of a the weather link monster. So that really does solve a huge problem for the deck. They have a good Link 3 monster, and now actually they have 2 good Link 3 monsters, but it was pretty difficult to summon that card on turn 1. They reminded me a lot of like Altergeist, for example, where on turn 1 you usually weren't going into the extra deck that much. However, with this card now, you can actually summon those Link 3s on turn 1 pretty reliably, which does make a noticeable difference. The final effect here, which is also insane, says during your main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves normal summon one the weather monster. So this card does everything. It's a consistency boosting card, it gives you an extra normal summon, and it allows you to use your spell and trap cards as link material for your boss monsters. So overall, the Weather Forecast, without even looking at the other new link monster, is a huge deal for Weather Painter decks. It'll be a staple 3 of, I can pretty much guarantee it. And like I said, the Weather deck already had a number of good cards. They maybe weren't the most consistent deck out there, and they didn't always have the best end game, but I think the Weather Forecast is going to make a big difference for that deck. The new Link monster is the Weather Painter Moonbow, a Link 3 Dark Fairy effect monster with 2400 attack. It takes 3 the weather monsters to bring out, and it says if this card is link summoned, you can special summon one of your banished the weather monsters. That's pretty good. And then it says the weather effect monsters this card points to gain the following effect. Quick effect, you can banish this card, then target one monster your opponent controls, banish it until the standby phase of the next turn. So that's basically how the weather deck works. You give your monsters abilities by having cards point to them. In this case, we are giving them the ability to basically be like a Farfa for opponent's monsters. The final effect says if this link summoned card is destroyed, you can special summon one the Weather Painter Rainbow from your extra deck. So if your opponent manages to deal with this monster, you just float into the other boss monster for the Weather Painter strategy. This card is incredibly good. We have 2 new Weather Painter cards that both have 3 relevant effects. I think Weather Painters are going to be a good rogue deck once Dimension Force releases. That might be jumping the gun a little bit, but also keep in mind here that we still don't have a red Weather Painter card, so we might even have one more card released for this deck. Maybe not in Dimension Force, but possibly in the future. Already though, even without a red Weather Painter card, I think these 2 cards are going to be a huge help, and I think Weather Painters are going to be pretty good once this set releases. In the OCG, the set releases in just a few weeks here, but we'll have to wait a few months to get these cards in the TCG. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about these new legacy support cards for the Battleguard archetype and for the Weather archetype. I think these cards are all very good, but let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll see you later. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.